he could step on the stage and this huge person in these great big boots, and people would fall about, just laugh at him. It was an indefinable quality.
You know, when I was a kid, I was ugly. I was.
His timing was wonderful. He could ride an audience.
I was.
And he always looked surprised when he got laughs, which was endearing in its own way.
He went to places that no one else dared go. And he just was a total original.
His reputation for drinking was awesome. It was a disguise he could assume at any time in order to be socially comfortable.
I felt I never really met him. I met Tommy the performer. I very rarely got any glimpses of Tommy the person.
Well, I wouldn't say he was a pushing child. He was rather on the quiet side. But he was always very, very keen on conjuring. From the time he was about 6 and a half, 7, I suppose. And when we used to go there, he used to practice on his mother. We used to have a little, he used to stand in the door leading to what we used to call the scullery and use that as a stage. Uncle Tom was born in South Wales, Tommy's father, and Auntie Gert was born in Devonshire, and they met in Crediton through the war, through the 1418 war. Tommy was born in Caerphilly and came to Exeter when he was 3.
After leaving school, Tommy Cooper had a brief career as an apprentice shipwright before joining the army in 1940. It was whilst he was stationed in Egypt that he began to develop his act, which would barely change throughout his entire career.
Egg bag, bag, egg, egg bag, bag, egg bag, egg bag. And now we have one long single piece of rope.
In 1946, he met and married Gwendolyn Henty, who he always called Dove. They had 2 children, Thomas and Vicky. After leaving the army, Tommy Cooper began touring the theatre and variety club circuit. In 1947, he began his long television career, even gaining some success with American TV audiences.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy Cooper.
I was sunbathing this morning, and I was lying in the park, and a little boy crept across to me, and he poured something all over my back. He said, "This will make you brown." I said, "What is it?" He said, "Gravy."
Always hugely popular in Britain, by the late 1960s, he was recording his 6th television series.
Well, I think he was a sure ratings getter, because everything he says produces laughter.
Just before the show, the producer said to me, he said, "How are you tonight?" I said, "Well, I'm feeling a little bit funny." He said, "Well, get out there before it wears off."
Daily Mail or Daily Express, I think they interviewed about 100 people to find someone who didn't like Tommy Cooper. They couldn't find anyone who didn't like Tommy Cooper.
There was a foreman on the building site. He looked at the man at the top of the ladder. He said, "You, get your money in your cars, you're finished." I said, "Eh?" He said, "Get your money in your cars, you're finished." I said, "Eh?" He said, "Get your money in your cars, Everybody else.
He was probably one of the highest earning comics around. He was extremely popular, and he always delivered.
I'll produce an empty paper bag, and will I produce a live pigeon.
Well, I'd seen him lots of times on stage, but I'd never actually met him until the first day of rehearsals. And as I remember rightly, I was sitting down, and this huge man came in. I hadn't realized till then just how big he was.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
And what he always looked when he came out, as if he'd been hurled on stage. He always looked surprised and panicky.
He didn't like rehearsing, and he didn't like the idea of it being scripted and down and set in concrete and so on. He liked to be freer than that.
We learned, as we went through the series, to make the sketches shorter and shorter. His attention span was not perhaps his strongest suit.
You serve lobsters?
Oh, certainly, sir.
Right. We're going to have
I think the directors understood well that there had to be this spontaneous nature in working with Tommy. However carefully scripted it wasn't going to come out that way, and it shouldn't have come out that way because that was his essence.
All right, who put the finger on me?
Well, the interview was the one each week, which was the one I found most difficult to prepare for.
You like the idea of the interview sketch. I know where a man dressed in normal 1960s clothes interviewed somebody in historical garb. I think you liked that because it was very freewheeling and full of gags.
With Tommy, you never quite knew where the laughs were going to come, even though they were the ones in the script, but there'd be 2 or 3 others, and he would build on them, and he would work the audience on them, you know, respond to the audience and so on. So that was always a bit of tightrope walking for me.
He was mortally afraid of the color green, and we wrote a Robin Hood sketch. And then he was given his costume, and it was green. He refused to wear it. So they had to run up another costume for him. And when he walked out, I seem to remember a huge laugh.
Never once was he relevant to any kind of political situation, any kind of social situation, any kind of situation. He very seldom referred to the setting he was in, or the set behind him, or the rest of the show. He didn't talk about other performers. He didn't do jokes about famous people. He didn't do anything that was about life. He was like a microcosm. Nothing affected the lunatic world in which he lived.
Listen.
I mean, he relied heavily on alcohol, but he never drank on the day of the show. And being rather dependent on the bottle, by the time it came to the show, he was starting to dry out. And he would be sweating very much and very, very hyper, you know, which is another reason for the size of performance on television.
He shot himself. Really? Yeah, right in the Mediterranean. Nothing. What's the matter with you?
I don't think he really enjoyed television very much. It was a necessary thing that he had to do. He would have much rather have a live audience. And it was in the studio, it was the live audience he worked to as well. And in a way, television was an eavesdropper upon a live performance with him.
1, 2, 2 and a half. All right, this time. 1, 2, 3, 8. How's that?
I think laughter and applause from a live audience was sustenance to him. And doing television didn't answer that.
Although he was best known as a television star, Tommy Cooper was as much in demand as a live performer as he was a TV personality. He spent much of his life on the road, sometimes turning down lucrative television deals to perform in variety clubs and theatres.
Tommy would sell you out. We would be sold out a couple of weeks before he came. We'd ring Miff, which was his manager, and he'd say, "Do you want my Tommy?" I say, "Of course I want your Tommy. That's what I'm ringing you for. I want 7 days." "No, he won't do 7 days, Bob. You can have him for 6. You can have my boy for 6. And he's going to cost you, same as everybody else, £6,000. And you've got to pay him when he finishes. Do you understand that?" "Yeah, that's all right, Miff." "Do you want the money up front?" "No, it'll be all right. Pay him on the night." He had a lady with him, which was his dresser. Very nice lady. She always came with him.
I don't know that Tommy, not being the greatest housekeeper in the world, could have managed to shift all his gear around if it hadn't been for Mary Fieldhouse.
I first met Tommy when I was working for Thames Television. And after a few weeks, it sort of became obvious, I think, that we were both slightly smitten with each other, and we started a relationship pretty well immediately. We certainly were together for about 17 years. He told me that he was going to travel, and he said, would you like to travel with me?
She was totally dedicated to him, I can tell you that. You couldn't have anybody more dedicated to anybody. You know, she was, she done everything for him, worshipped him.
I did quite a lot of paintings of Tommy whilst we were on tour in various hotels. They were just memories, just sort of whatever happened whilst we were in particular places. We'd be taken to the hotel. I unpacked and got everything ready for him. He had so many medicines. I mean, for his nose and his eyes, and of course, a lot of cough things. He'd pick up a newspaper and see an advert for something and say, well, try that. So I had to go the next day, first thing, to a chemist and get whatever. Oh, I was always shopping. I think he was a bit of a hypochondriac, I really do. And he was a pretty superstitious person. You couldn't put the fares down with the head on the tabletop. It had to be open because the spirits were allowed to be free to roam.
What you had to do is you had to look after him while he was here. Well, I used to... The dressing room was like his home for the week. I mean, he's got a hotel and here.
Before the show, Tommy always had to have everything on his dressing table exactly as it would be every night. You knew you got used to putting the tablets there and the medicine there and the glasses and the beer in a row for the back of the, at the back of the table for the end of the show. Everything had to be hung up and put sort of over a chair or something neatly.
He would get on at 11 o'clock. Yeah, 11 o'clock, and he would do 1 hour. The compere would go out. He would get the call that he was on. 2 minutes, oh, you're on, Tommy, in 2 or 3 minutes.
We'd knock on his dressing room door, are you ready, Tommy? And he'd say, yeah, I'm ready, yeah. Dressing room.
The door would open, the dresser would be there. Everything's okay, Tommy. Austin Brown would announce him.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's star time at Lakeside. Would you please welcome your star for this evening, Mr. Tommy Cooper?
He wouldn't arrive out on stage. He would do 20 minutes in the dressing room before he went out. And he'd say, "Good God, I'm in the dressing. I'm in the dressing room. I can't get out the dressing room. All the coats are falling down on me." And he'd start, and he would do all that kind of thing. And then he'd make out he'd fell over. You'd hear a bang where he'd fell over. I'm still on my way. I'm coming. Don't go now. Don't go. He'd say. And but the way he was saying it was so funny. It was part of a joke and an act.
And the audience were looking completely confused. And I don't know why they always did. If they'd seen Tommy Cooper before, chances are they'd seen this routine before, but it was a tradition. The music would stop, and nothing would happen.
By the time he got out there, 10 minutes, he'd be stumbling through, and then all of a sudden he'd appear. Then they would go crazy.
Here's the trick now with 3 pieces of rope. Watch very, very closely. Look, you go un, a, deux, trois. There's a bit of French there, you see. Like that. Well, you just bend this over here like this. Now, the idea of the trick is this. You just get one of the loops, 3 pieces there like that. See? One of them there, look, like that, see? And what you do then, see? You put this into a loop like that. A loop there, then you get that one, you put that into a loop there like that. Then you get the third one, and you put... Now, I made a mistake. Look, you get a long piece of rope. Aha, yes!
They more or less knew what he was going to do, and the fact is, if he didn't do as expected, they would have been disappointed.
Nothing changed. He added jokes when he thought they were funny, and subtracted jokes when he was tired of them.
That's it.
If you watched him every night, you still fall about, because everything he'd done was funny, and it was slightly different. He'd never done it exactly the same each night. Hello?
He did things that were so original that they could only have come from some really kind of strong creative streak within him. I saw him once at the Golden Garter in Manchester when he walked on with a 5-bar gate and put it down beside him on the stage. Didn't refer to it, didn't look at it even, just put it there and got on with his show. Then when he got a very big laugh, he opened the gate, walked through it and walked back to the microphone, shut the gate behind him. And then he did it again, and did it again, and did it again, until it became a laugh in its own right, as whether he was going to walk through the gate or not. And eventually he stepped over it.
Here's a little trick that I watched very, very closely. Look, the red handkerchief there like that, and you go like that.
Although on stage he didn't do many tricks that went well, backstage he would demonstrate that he was a real, true magician or conjurer, because everything he did was superb. Whilst you'd just seen him on the stage doing rubbish, in the dressing room, his sleight of hand, I mean, big hands, sleight of hands was amazing.
Look at that. Thank you.
When he came off, for 5 minutes it was quiet. It was something that he demanded.
If Dove was coming down, his dresser wouldn't be here, but all his stuff would be laid out.
Dove would always come dressed like Barbara Cartland for the show. I mean, she was, and Dove used to make as big an entrance as Tommy. That was a moment to remember. You know, Dove's arrived, you could hear a hush go down.
She was hard. She was hard. She'd swear at me. She said, "You're looking after my Tommy. You know, this is the best act and he's clean. You won't find anybody like my Tommy." And she'd be roaring off at me. And Tommy said to her, "Now be careful, Dove. Don't go on at him. He's the boss."
I remember when he brought Tom in, his son, in as a sort of a road manager. He used to manage Tommy in case bags and things.
He always wanted to know where he was if he wasn't in the room. So if Thomas was down at the bar, Thomas about? Tell him I want him. He needed him close.
I don't think Tom felt he got the recognition he needed from his father. I think it would have helped him a lot if his father had let him know how wonderful that was, that he toured with him, that he was there for him, and that he didn't really concentrate on his own career. He put that off because his father needed him.
Has it been difficult being the son of Tommy Cooper because you're an actor, a serious actor?
Yeah, yes it has. Yes, I mean originally that's why I changed my name. And when I first started 10 years ago, I wouldn't let anybody know who I was at all, nobody. But
I think that was a two-edged sword working for his father, when really he should have been working in his own right. I wish he'd started sooner, and I wish that tragically he hadn't died and was still doing it, because I do think that he would have been, he would have made his own mark.
I used to prepare myself for Tommy Cooper to arrive, knowing it. Try and get some early nights in before he comes. Try and get some, because I go to bed at 3 every night, 3. Try and get a couple of 11 o'clockers or something in before Tommy comes, because I know directly Tommy comes, there's no sleep. And I used to sometimes nod off in the afternoon in the car. I used to park up and have a little sleep, about a cat nap for about an hour, to catch up, because I mean, when he got to the 5th day, you were shattered.
I think he did it on purpose, just to see how far he could push people without saying, "Okay, Tom, time to go home." Nobody ever dared say that. I can remember bringing a taxi up for him to the backstage 7 times, and his reply was, "I'll just have one more drink, and then I'll go."
We used to follow Tommy in, which meant that you found a staff completely exhausted from a week of Tommy Cooper, because they'd been up all night. And they'd been up all night the night before I arrived on the Sunday to take over to work that, begin my week. And it's, Tommy, we were up till 6 this morning, Tommy. I drank every bottle of booze in the place.
He wanted to be anywhere where he was enjoying himself. And if he could put his hand out and drink what he wanted, and he could give you a drink when you came in, whatever you wanted, that was his pleasure, and a social part of his life. And if you said, I'll have a vodka and tonic, he would give you a vodka and tonic, and he would pour himself a vodka and tonic. And he would drink the vodka and tonic, cheers, and he'd drink that. If somebody else comes and have a scotch and lemonade, he would have a scotch and lemonade. You know? I come and say, oh, Tommy, I'll just have a half a Guinness. He'd have half a Guinness. Incredible bloke. Tommy's bar bill here would be roundabouts between 900 and 1,000 quid a week. But that was not just for him, that was for all his people, because he was very social. You know, acts used to come and see him, artists used to come and see him, press, BBC and all these kind of people.
Throughout his career, Tommy Cooper's popularity never waned. He remained one of the nation's favourite comedians.
And my wife, she went to have her face lifted, and they said it couldn't be done. So for £10, they lowered her body. I said to the Chinese waiter behind the counter, I said, excuse me, have you got frog's legs? He said, yes. I said, well, hop over the counter and get me a cheese sandwich.
I think drinking was quite a bit of a problem. He did try and give up, you see, but not altogether. It's impossible.
He was so funny about it. That was one of the problems. If you tried to talk seriously to him, he wouldn't let you. And somehow he'd skew the whole subject sideways or say something so funny that you just forgot what you were talking about. I don't think he really seriously thought he was killing himself. I think he just thought, as so many people do, well, I'm entitled to a drink.
We never really discussed why. Why is he drinking? Perhaps it was a bit of insecurity. Perhaps he just needed, again, that confidence building. But we never really talked about that. After the show, he normally liked something to eat. He'd prefer it after the show than before. Sometimes he didn't eat anything until about 3 o'clock in the morning, which was terribly late. So we always took a little gas cylinder. This gas cylinder was wonderful. I mean, I could cook liver and bacon and vegetables. No one seemed to mind. And the one thing that he liked was for me to read books to him. I read one or two things. I read the Forsyth Saga. Sometimes I'd read a page, get to the bottom of the page, turn it over, and he'd say, would you read that page again? So, I don't believe it, but I did.
He didn't like people laughing at him all the time. I mean, I remember we played at a golf club and he said to the steward, I'll have a gin and tonic. I can't do impressions, but it was something like that. And the fellow went, ha, 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 yes, Mr. Good. He went, what are you laughing at?
I'm sure there were moments when Tom felt a little inadequate. He hadn't many social graces, and I don't think he was educated to a degree that he would like to have been. Nor do I think he was all that curious. Otherwise he would have carried books and become self-educated. So I think to a certain extent he must have felt somewhat uncertain.
He was insecure about, his largeness. But at the same time, he was a funny, he looked funny and people enjoyed laughing at him, didn't they? They enjoyed that sort of strange heaviness and so on.
Give me that million. Give me the girl. And leave the rest to me. Hey!
A good deal of the public knew that Tommy was abusing himself with alcohol and with tobacco. I think we all knew that. He was wheezing on stage. And also Tommy, who was the most good-hearted of men, who would do anything for you if he liked you, was starting to lose his temper a lot. And when he lost his temper, he was a big man, he was still strong, and he picked you up, and he picked people up. and slammed you against the wall, you didn't forget it. I mean, it would shake you for days. And if he got that angry, and he never used to, I mean, this came, I think, with the illness, then it was quite terrifying. As time went on, you could hardly make out what he was saying, and yet you sort of filled in the missing consonants because you wanted so much to be on his side and to enjoy him.
Ah, what a lovely day it's been. Do you know, it's about 80 degrees in the shade. I was clever, I stayed in the sun.
It was the night of his 50th birthday, and he was suddenly realizing that, right, you know, he was getting older. And he cried. He suddenly said, I don't want to grow old. But, which seemed, you know, so kind of strange for a big fella to sort of worry about getting old. I know he'd had various problems health-wise.
I remember he used to be in quite a lot of pain with his legs. Now, most people would moan and groan about that or complain, you know. He didn't. He stayed in his dressing room until he felt better. And then he came out and made jokes.
Well, he used to suffer from phlebitis. I don't know about anything else, but I understood that when he was in Italy, he had a heart attack, and he was quite ill there. And he was advised to give up the stage, but of course he was very, very much into it, and that was that.
He was wonderfully buoyant. You know, nothing got him down, really.
The very last time I ever was with Tommy, I had a chat show that ran for 3 years on BBC Two. He had been very ill by then, several times. So when he came in, which would be only a few weeks before that final appearance, he said, I have news for you. He said, I've given up alcohol, and I smoke it. So we all broke into spontaneous applause because we all loved him. The fact that he'd given up the two things we thought were going to kill him was wonderful news. So we started talking about what he was going to do, and Mary opened a bag and gave him a tin of lager and a panatella. And I said, Tommy, everyone here is bewildered. You said you'd given up alcohol and you'd given up smoking. Well, you can't call this urine alcohol. I can't get a draw out of this blood thing.
I think that Tommy was living and enjoying. I think he knew there was something wrong there and he was in problems, but he was living every minute. And where he died is where he would have wanted to die.
And the night he died, in 1984, in April at Her Majesty's, he was very frail. He wasn't as robust as I've seen him.
It's strange how you cannot imagine what's going to happen. Everything was perfectly normal. The rehearsal went extremely well. Then Tommy, he decided he'd have a sleep for about half an hour. And after the sleep, I took him in some apple crumble, which he didn't eat. And then we went down, and the show started, and went very smoothly, and Jamie was delighted.
Thank you.
The final thing that Tommy was supposed to do was this cloak. What was supposed to happen with the cloak? Things were bought from it, and he threw them on stage.
I was waiting behind the curtain to do the last trick with him. And I've heard people say, and people write, they knew he'd died. No, they didn't, because he didn't fall over. He sank, the girl put the cloak round him, and I was going to come from between his legs, passing him all the things that he was, the cod magic he was doing. And he just went there, and then he went, ah, and he settled down on his haunches. He didn't fall.
And then they brought the curtain down, and young Tom went on stage. He came towards me and said, this is for real. I can hear him now saying, this is for real. And then I went on the stage, and the doctor was there, and the curtain had caught his foot, and I moved the curtain so that his foot was clear. And again, that's something that I can remember. Nothing, is it?
It was a live television show, and they administered the kiss of life. And he was there while the next two acts were performing. Then a commercial break came in.
Whilst we were in the ambulance, the doctors were pounding him, and one of them said to me, "He's really fighting." Isn't it strange to say he's fighting when he was sort of lying there? So obviously he didn't want to die.
The show finished, and he'd gone to the hospital, and I had to go on the 10 o'clock news.
Fellow comedians have been paying tribute to the late Tommy Cooper, who died last night after appearing on stage at a London theatre. The show was being brought...
He took the idea of the conjurer and made it into this extraordinary person who got it wrong, got it wrong, got it wrong. But what Tommy did, which was much more than that, he extended it into being virtually an all-round comedian.
I think people have no one to compare him with, and he was just mysteriously funny.
On the numerous occasions I worked with him, I can't think of an evening when he didn't steal the show. He was always they call it the who's best. Well, he was always, be it a Royal show, be it a Sunday night at the Palladium, be it whatever, he was always the governor.
I know it sounds crazy, but I can't hear Tommy's voice talking at all. You know how you can conjure up people's voices if you want to, your father or your brother or whatever. You can conjure them up almost immediately. But I can see him and hear him on a television show, but I can't hear his voice.
The series continues next week with the unforgettable John LeMessurier.
Oh, John was a ladies' man.
What's the Christian name?
Marcia.
What a pretty name.
You either got it or you ain't. And John LeMessurier had it.
Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's going now. 3 and... Okay, right, keep your thumb on it.
All right, go on.
I'd like to show you a little trick now. Look, there's nothing, first of all, there's nothing in my hand, you'll see. And also, in my elbows are empty.